Hello, this is Sarfraz Niazi coming to you from Chicago. Good morning in Chicago and good evening in Pakistan. Khawatin Hazrat, Assalamu alaikum. I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to speak to you today on a topic which is very timely and very critical. एक शेर है कहते हैं कि गिरनी ते हम पे बिजली तजल्ली न तूर पे गिरनी थी हम पे बिजली तजल्ली न तूर पे देते हैं बादा ज़र्फ़ क़दा ख़ार देख कर. The lightning should have struck us, not the flash of the montour. The wine is given to the drunkards based on how much they can hold. This pandemic, God gave us the pandemic, but of course, it's something that we were able to hold, that we were able to survive. But if we do not learn from it, then all the sacrifices that we have given across the globe will go to waste. So today's topic is about what did we learn and what we can do in the future to make our lives safer and better. Pandemics have been with us for a very, very long time. Actually, as long as we can say that we've been able to maintain a history. There was a time when half the Europe was wiped out. We have lost hundreds of millions of people in pandemics, especially the ones that are viral pandemics. Viruses are not living entities. They're just piece of chemistry that float around, but they only pass through a carrier. So let's say the virus is present in a bat or an animal and is perfectly happy. You and I carry thousands of viruses in us all the time, but they do not do any harm to us, but they could possibly be harmful to another species. When the virus jumps a species, you have a problem, like you just saw in coronavirus coming to humans. So pandemic have been with us for a very long time, and these are not going anywhere. The pandemic that came in the last century are still with us and going to be staying with us for a long time. It's just that once we acquire a herd immunity, which is about 40% of people having antibodies, then it tapers down, but it never leaves us. So we learn to live with it. And the best way to live through is to be able to create a protection like a vaccine that I will talk about today with you. So first of all, let me share with you, in the midst of a lot of noise you will hear in the media and literature, science, the only data that is worth looking at is this data here, is the number of deaths per 100,000 or a million. That's all. These data do not change very rapidly, and it tells you a lot of story that other graphs would never give it to you. For example, we can see here that the highest rate of mortality was found in UK. And Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh are quite low for many reasons. First of all, it could be because of lack of reporting, which is possible. But maybe there is some connection out there that we do not know today. And that's the kind of lesson you probably will learn and the aftermath of COVID-19. Is this the genes? Is this the geography? Is this any vaccinations we have had like BCG? It is to do with weather or whatever else, the diet, but I do not know. And we would not know for a very long time, and we may never know. There are some countries where they had no deaths from COVID. At least that's what they were telling, but I'm sure if there were enough deaths, they would not be able to hide it. So we're still learning a lot about this pandemic. Now, the ironic part is that anything you learn from your past pandemic does not apply to this pandemic, except for one thing, how it spreads. So we'll talk about that, how well we have done. So let's see what happens, okay? Once the virus got a hold of us, there was a huge rush to see how we can treat it. And this is called repurposing drugs. I think except for remdesivir and anticoagulants and dexamethasone, we haven't been able to find anything useful. In fact, there were a lot of very dangerous suggestions given, which I think should have been avoided. But this brings us to one learning, which I will talk about later, is there's a lot of room to repurpose existing approved safe drugs. The second thing we need to look at, which I find it most exciting today, is that we have to have a vaccine. And never in the history was there such a rush, such a funding. There are hundreds of billions of dollars have been invested in getting a vaccine on the table fast. And all of this has given us great promise. So a traditional vaccine will have an inactivated virus or semi-inactivated virus, a protein-based vaccine or genetic vaccine. But the most exciting one that I find are the viral vector vaccines, where you take a piece of RNA or DNA and you put it in there, and this is a synthetic vaccine. It does not require you to go through the process of growing virus, which is one of the most expensive part of developing vaccines. FDA has not approved any RNA vaccines so far, and we may see for the first time an RNA vaccine for human use, which will open up an entirely new arena of research and accessibility to vaccines that we never had before. But there comes the issue, the challenges of any pandemic. First of all, there is a disbelief. There are still people around the world, including many in Pakistan and US, perhaps more in US, who don't believe there is a pandemic. There is this pandemic movie that was disbanded from YouTube, talks about all kinds of conspiracy theories, China and US investors and whatnot. And so is this Rashid Buttar's video that he put on that was also banned and removed from YouTube. Rashid Buttar is a physician, a very good man. He served US Army, but I think the position he took was absolutely unprofessional in cashing in on a pandemic. But I want you to know that facts will remain facts. There is no conspiracy. Virus is virus. Yes. Could China have done anything about it? Absolutely. But I'm a student of history, and I always say in the hindsight, everything looks perfectly right? I don't know. But the fact is that today we're living in the world where people are moving around so much. Just imagine, if there was no air travel, there will be no pandemic. Okay, so now there were hundreds and thousands of people coming from China to US every day. Now, I don't know how many were infected, how many were not infected, but apparently China was very successful in curbing the deaths. They only got about 5,000 deaths as opposed to 165,000 in US, okay, with 4% population versus 30% of world population. So I think you should be aware that facts may be hard to find. There is no conspiracy, there's no theory. It is what it is. It happens very frequently. The last big one was 100 years ago. Oh, you just happen to be the chosen one. You must have been given this thing because the God thinks you can handle it. Second thing is that science and politics don't really mix, okay? Many administrators had the issue that we should open up the markets because people want to go in there and it's a political issue. I think the politicians should leave science to scientists and scientists should leave politics to politicians, okay? They should not mix it. So public health management is a big issue. I don't think many countries had this ready as well as it could have been. I think WHO goofed up also, so did CDC. I think it just hit everybody so hard that it became difficult to visualize. But the fraudulent treatments, here's a Baba Asad Bengali in Karachi who will treat everything. He will give you coronavirus treatment, and then he will also help you make every desire come true. You know what? I want to go to see him. I got so many desires I want fulfilled. But I think people actually fall for this, okay? That was amazes me. He's a president of a country on the right-hand side. I hope you can see the picture. He's drinking an herbal product, which is inaugurated in that country to cure coronavirus. I'm sure there are many in Pakistan selling olive oil and inhalations and other herbs for whatever reason. And the ironic part is that people are actually using them and believing that it will work. For purpose of record, I want to tell you that as of today, FDA has not approved any drug or any diagnostic kit for COVID. Keep in mind, I said not approved. There is an emergency act that has allowed their use, but it does not mean these products are approved. A lot of companies from China and Korea and maybe from India are selling the diagnostic kits everywhere. And I'm not sure if any of them are reliable. So be careful, especially those of you who are in decision-making and securing large quantities of these products, that there are no approved kits. If somebody says this is FDA approved, they are lying to you. FDA may allow you to sell it under Emergency Act, does not mean they have met the FDA's requirement of safety and efficacy. And so is the case with any drug. One of the biggest fraud that you will see coming around you is use of sanitizers. You know, you want to clean your hands. And somehow this industry picked up very quickly. There are issues with it. First of all, you have to have a minimum of 70 to 75% ethanol to make this product effective. Many of them don't because ethanol is expensive. And on top of it, if you do not use the ethanol that has been denatured, then there is a heavy taxation involved. Now, one way to denature ethanol, the cheapest way is to add methanol into it. And that's how, if you buy denatured ethanol from many countries, they may not even tell you, but they're adding methanol. Last week, FDA banned more than 100 products because they were using a denatured alcohol that had methanol in it. So if you come across a cheap product, cheap sanitizer, okay, you want to make sure it has no methanol. You cannot put methanol on your skin or inhale it or take it extremely toxic. And there are other issues with it. But because there was an opportunity, okay, so many fast artists came into market and started selling whatever they could sell. Unfortunately, there were enough people, okay, who had believed in miracles and they will buy anything. So I just want to warn you that there are a lot of issues with those products. Data reporting, I think, I don't know how good the system that you have in Pakistan. If you report 100 deaths a day or not, I wouldn't pay a lot of attention to it. There are always issues even in big countries. More particularly, people who are testing positive. What do you do with them? Okay, so if somebody is positive, the best you can do is to ask the person to quarantine, but that's about all you can do. Now, there comes this issue of social distancing, which has been shown to be effective for a very simple reason. Okay, this virus cannot survive too long in the air and too long on the surface. It's just, I wouldn't use the word die because it's not alive. It just destructs itself. Okay, you don't need to clean up a surface if you leave it alone for 3 hours, 4 hours, it's gonna the virus will be inactivated anyway. So what happens is this: if you keep a little distance, okay, anyone, even if when someone is talking, they are effusing a lot of fine particles that can carry. Now, keep in mind, no virus or bacteria can transmit in the air. They have no wings. Now that is, I know of. They have to ride at the coattail of a droplet of water. Fine droplets. So if you avoid that, your chances of getting infected are reduced. 2-3 months ago, I was asked to give a talk about what do we do on Eid. You want to hug people, what do we do? I said, you know what? अच्छा है दिल के पास रहे पास बहाने दिल, लेकिन कभी कभी इसे तन्हा भी छोड़ दे. और दूसरी चीज ये कि अजीज इतना ही रखो कि दिल बहल जाए, अब इस कदर भी न चाहो कि दम निकल जाए. So I said, get it out. Okay, there's no significance to this hugging and kissing. I'm sure you'll find a better times to do that. And I think the same thing is coming up this week. Again, I'm telling everybody, stay away from each other. No matter how deeply you desire to show your affection, the best way to show the affection is that you don't risk their lives and your own. I don't think anybody will follow it, just like they didn't do it last time. But let's talk about my friend, the man who I believe, Steve Jobs. He said, he's the man of technology, but he was also a visionary. He said, this century will be a century of biologics and technology combined. If you get a chance, okay, I'd like you to read his biography. It's a remarkable book about a man who believed in certain things. I remember one place he said, I'm most afraid of people, and I'm only afraid of those people who don't give up. He was a very harsh administrator or whatever, but some of his sayings hold very well, including this one. So let me take you back 3,000 years ago. We began using herbal drugs. Now, what happened before that? Before that, we were foragers. We were going around, and it was called all anecdotal medicine. There was no recording of it. Somebody who had a pain, it happened to be eating a berry or a leaf, and the pain goes away, and he tells his friend, hey, listen, next time your leg is hurting, eat this leaf. That's all. I'm sure there were many who ate the leaf and the berry and didn't live to tell about it. It was all anecdotal. There was no structured medicine period unless about 3,000 years ago when we start using herbal drugs. And there's a lot of history, if you want to read it, okay, how the Islamic history is full of some of the best inventions that came out. Indian continent gave more to medicines than any other part of the world. But it was not until 19th century, early 1832, when the first chemical drug was used, which was chloral hydrate. Not too long ago. Until then, we just had anecdotal and herbal medicines. But keep in mind, even well before that, for millions of years, we survived as a species, not because we had the drugs available, not because we had testing available, not because we could do surgery, but because of a pharmacy that resides in our body. And I always say, it is open 24 hours. That is where the turnaround has come. The first biological medicine was approved in 1982 only, not long ago. Insulin, recombinant insulin. As of today, I believe there are 279 biological drugs approved by FDA. And I think many more will be coming soon. And it was in 2017 that we got the first genetic medicine approved. And there were at least half a dozen more approved since then. So you can see the transition is taking us back to square one, basically, our own body. So one of the learning that I will emphasize to you that came out of COVID is that we got to go back and listen to our body again and see if we can find solutions from within and not from without. So let's see what is the outcome that I'm anticipating, I'm hoping. I think FDA will approve the first RNA vaccine, which will open up an era of vaccine production that did not exist before. Those of you who are part of the industry know very well. Okay? See, it requires a huge investment to get the vaccines ready. The cost selling price is very low, so there isn't a lot of margins. But now with this new era of chemically derived vaccines, basically it's you synthesize few amino acids. You don't even need that many, which was all done in your laboratory. And then you inject that into body. So the body cells see this as a part of the program to make proteins. So the purpose of the RNA and DNA is to replicate the proteins. We make thousands of them every day in every cell of our body. And now it starts making a protein which is part of the virus. So suddenly the body sees this protein, which is foreign to it, as an antigen, and it starts making antibodies. How simple it can be. Somehow it needed a huge infusion of R&D that was not coming because the vaccines were not a profitable venture for most companies. Now that there was money available, as I mentioned, hundreds of billions have gone into a fast-track development of vaccine, which will in itself open up a new arena or new area of development in the future, a fast-tracked development. But I think with RNA vaccine approval, we'll have a new history to write, especially in the developing countries where the affordability can be a big issue. An RNA vaccine will cost only a fraction of what a whole virus vaccine will cost. New biologics, I have no doubt in my mind, and neither should you, that even though today 70% of all new drugs are biologics, I believe tomorrow 100% will be biologic or close to it, new ones. Chemicals are not going anywhere, but you don't see a lot of breakthroughs coming in chemicals. There will be few here far between, but the opportunities that they are there right now in biologics are so big that most companies will focus mainly on biologics. Repurposing drugs, I have always said it, but never made this much impact as I'm going to make today, is that if there's a drug available, already approved and proven safe, can you find a different use of it? Take an example of Viagra was developed as an antihypertensive drug. Well, that's not what it's sold for. Beautiful example. But here comes the a caveat. For biological drugs, let's say antibodies, they have such a huge structure, 150,000 Daltons structure. There are millions of receptor bindings possible on this molecule. Can you find another receptor site, another application? Answer is absolutely yes. Except today, we have this ability through what you call the phage display libraries. It's a very low cost, and I would encourage any company who wants to invest money in R&D is to invoke the phage display to find new indications for existing biological products. You don't want to go from scratch one, okay, because it's a very expensive process to establish safety, but you can find new indications, and they are happening every day. So I see that, but in addition to that, the repurposing, dexamethasone has been around for 100 years. Now we're finding it's probably one of the best compounds to slow down the cytokine rush. Let's find other products like this. That will be the future of R&D in the industry. We will also be able to have better control of pandemics. Now we know what causes the issues with it, okay? It's education, education, education. It is so difficult to nail into the minds of people some of the basic facts, okay? There are people in US, they say, I'm not going to wear the mask. It is my right to freedom. So I wrote back, I said, yes, you have every right to kill yourself. In fact, the more of you get killed, the world will be a better place. But there is no constitution that gives you a right to kill others. The reason you wear mask is not to protect yourself. You can be selfish, but to make sure you don't pass it on to your children, to your neighbors, to the people you love, and those you don't love. So education has been a big issue. And I think developing countries must understand, okay, what kind of education they need to bring in. To give you an example, like we have a celebration coming next Friday, people want to go and hug each other. So if the Islamic scholars come out and say, no, don't do this, people will listen to it more than a simple scientist like myself begging them. I would have no impact. Okay? So I think it's the education part has to be refined and polished to handle not only this pandemic, but anyone coming in the future. So let's spend a few minutes on the Pakistan industry evolution. Pharma industry is a core of every civilization, every country, every business. And this is probably the only business in the world that is recession proof. When there's recession, people buy more drugs. They buy a psychotic drug, depressive drug, but drugs will always be with us, especially in countries like Pakistan where the diseases are rampant. So one of the basic requirements is where do you get your active drug, especially once the generic laws were passed, okay, there was a big rush to get the APIs, and there were none available because until that time, the companies who were selling brand product were making the active drug also. And then came laws, okay, which had to do with environment control, how much of organic solvent you can throw in the air. That caused the complete shutdown of synthesis of APIs in US and Europe. And guess what? There were two countries waiting for it, China and India. They grabbed the opportunity. Pakistan had an opportunity to make APIs. It had at one time a very nice fermentation industry making penicillins. They shut everything down and chose only to do finished products. And I will tell you a little later why it happened. But that is a fact. So the train has left the station. You cannot catch up with APIs that are already selling at a very low cost from China or India. Forget about that. But you have a lot of opportunities still today to make new APIs, the high-end APIs, the large margin APIs, the more complex APIs, and go back on the train if you want to do it. India and China are the biggest suppliers. I think if I were to put trust in one or other, I think India will be a better choice. But again, that depends on how you set up your specification. China is where the price is, but you have to be very careful. There's nothing free in this real world. In 1980s, the biological medicines came with the insulin, as I mentioned earlier. And again, both China and India jumped on an opportunity, and they captured the markets. They're making biologics, all kinds, monoclonal antibodies, cytokines, insulins, you name it, they're making all of it and supplying to a good part of the world. Pakistan did nothing, and they just wanted to keep pushing finished products at low cost. Then in 17 came genetic medicines. And I know for sure, my personal experience, both countries have invested heavily, anticipating this to be a major modus operandi for treating many diseases in the future. They're ready. I'm not sure if anyone in Pakistan is ready today. So first, let me recite a verse to you again. It says, Yaran tez gam ne महमिल को जा लिया, यारान तेज गाम ने महमिल को जा लिया, हम महवे नालाए जरसे कारवां रहे. Our fast-moving friends got to the destination already, while we kept waiting to hear the bell to let the caravan roll. That's exactly what happened, my dear. There was a huge opportunity on APIs, a huge opportunity on selling your products globally, and you missed it. Why did you miss it? Okay, I think I've been asked so many times. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, okay? So I sat down with many of you. I think I had the fortune of speaking to just about every leader of the industry in Pakistan, as well as I've done with India, China, recently in Turkey, Argentina, Saudi Arabia, South America. And here's my conclusion. You see, at the time of partition, there were just the MNCs were there. There were no domestic companies. And most people who were supplying to the MNCs were the distributors, importers. And then they went and they were able to move a drug act to control the prices. Now, there came a point where it was no longer feasible, let alone profitable, for MNCs to make the products. And many of them folded out and say, okay, I'm not playing here. They don't have to play. I mean, the MNCs in Pakistan probably add such a small fraction of total profits that it's not even worth having them in the country. But they were there before, so they're staying there, some of them. Now, once the prices drop, MNCs followed up, say, okay, thank you very much. I'm not playing. It's just not worth it. And now the domestic industry came in. Now, keep in mind, they came in on the promise of reducing the cost of drug, cost of products. The government took it serious, which I think they should. And they say, okay, cut the price down. And you kept cutting the price down until you reach a point, okay, where the only way you can cut the price down is cut the quality down. I'm not saying anything, but I don't have a lot of trust if you say that you can sell the drug at the prices that are given to you by the ministry today. It's just not possible. I mean, the packaging cost sometime will be more than the price they have given to you. I don't know how you do this. So what they did was that this new industry that came up was much less risk averse. They don't want to take risk because they were making small margins. They were not there was no vision involved in looking at the future. It was a trading essentially. So they didn't take the risk. But when I risk means, are you investing in new structure? Are you investing in research? Are you investing in quality? Are you in fact investing in expansion? No, they just want to make it whatever will give them a cash flow and a profit, which they find reasonable. They didn't trust themselves because they didn't understand, okay, dekho zamana chal qayamat ki chal gaya, which way is the world going, okay? That was not possible. The emphasis was how to reduce the cost so I can make small margin rather than going for higher margins, which you cannot get no matter how hard in Pakistan. To do that, you have to get out of Pakistan. And to do that, you only need one thing, a quality which is universally acceptable. Your agencies, DRAP and others, are not very efficient, okay? And I don't want to blame them, you know, I think of this way, okay? It's not for the kind of investment that is available in these activities, you're not going to get the people to run it the way it should be run. I had the fortune about 15 years ago to write the draft, to establish draft. I don't know how much of it is implemented. It was approved at that time, but nevertheless, I think it could do a lot better. There are no resources. DRAP gets about 1% of your sales, which is a lot of money. Last 60 years, I don't know what they have done with the money. I'm sure it's not there anymore, but I don't think anything will come out of it. Also, I've heard it every time I come to Pakistan and we talk about it, there's a complaint that the government is not supporting the plans and they should help us export drugs and all kinds of things. But again, let me tell you something. Let's grow up, okay? Let's understand that your government or the Pakistani government is not capable. Two reasons: A, resources; B, the vision. They're both missing. So I think you're hitting your head against the wall is not very productive. So my advice to you is don't expect anything from them. You are capable of giving back to them rather than take anything from them. I'm a big proponent of not having price control. Yeah, there will be a glitch in between, you know, prices will go up or down, whatever. But in the end, I think it's in a competitive market, the price will be there for good products. The issue, I always said, you know, and I was interviewed so many times, the issue is not the price of drugs. The issue is the affordability. Can you imagine, even at the low prices you have in Pakistan, a majority of Pakistanis cannot afford them. I think we have to find a solution to make the drugs affordable to them, and not just by getting the price down, because no matter how far can you go, they will not be able to afford it. There's a big missed out understanding of what it takes to make healthcare accessible. You know, and I know that APIs are made in India in large quantities, supplying to the world, and you're getting some from India. A few months ago, there was a glitch when suddenly Pakistan stopped importing anything from India. I wrote a very long letter to the Prime Minister. He responded, and I told him my bottom line was, look, you know, healthcare is not politics. Okay, it's not easy for you to say, all right, you're not getting this API from India, go buy it from Burma. It's not that, okay? It's the pharmaceutical, okay? Just the process, if you do it right, I'm saying if you do it, it's going to take you about 2 years to change your source of API. The point is, what will you do till then? Okay. So I said, let's not make it a politics. I think in the long run, a good relations with India will be very helpful. I'm not promoting India or any country, anything like that. I'm only promoting sensibility. I think you will stay dependent on them for your API, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, so are many other countries. they'll be more than happy, I hope, to enter into good relationships. So I hope you can get resources ready for you. And going back to my little bit of philosophy, it is better to give than to receive. I don't know which religion you belong to, but this is teaching of every good life to live, okay? So don't expect from the government. Give it to them, make them rich. Imran Khan running to World Bank, begging for foreign exchange. I feel so ashamed, okay, that you cannot earn a few $1 billion for him to run the country. You give 1% sales to DRAP, okay? What are you getting back? Demand that something comes back. Okay? You have a right to do that. I don't think you have done hard enough. But I don't think there will be any payback or benefits coming unless you demand it. And I'll show you how to do this also. So as I said, don't expect, the budget of Pakistan government is $44 billion. Okay. FTA has a budget 2.5 times that. Just the FTA. Chicago has a bigger budget than Pakistan. But that's not, I'm not comparing it. I'm not, demeaning it or whatever it is. You have to understand, it's a country, just like many other countries, of a smaller means. Okay? For 200 million people, don't expect government to give you any grant or aid. They just don't have it. Okay? And if they do it, okay, it's probably come at the cost of spending somewhere else. So you can lead the economic recovery of the country. And I hope you think about it. It will also give you better margins. I'm sure you want to make some extra dollars. So it would be helpful for your own country. I think fair price competition is out there. I will recommend it highly. But you have to stay optimistic and confident. I don't understand a single reason. Bangladesh has got 3 or 4 approvals. I was part of it. No issue at all. FDA and EMA are colorblind. They want to get the best medicines for their people at the lowest cost. But the cost they never talk about. There's no, when you talk to FDA or you file your application, there's no cost involved. The pricing is nothing to do with FDA. They don't get involved with it at all. You just have to have a product that is safe and effective. I think there's a lot of opportunities for Pakistani entrepreneurs, especially the young ones coming out now. I always appeal to younger people, okay. हम तो अपनी जिंदगी बसर कर चुके रईस, ये किसकी जीत है जो बसर कर रहे हैं हम. I have lived my life, okay. Now I wanted to give it to the younger people to, hey, listen, you carry the mantle, you move it forward and help everybody out. So here's a small advice, not the only thing you can do. I think you are not ready to risk individually, which I understand. So let's risk collectively. I think you need to set up an entity that will provide you everything you need, totally independent of your business or any financial interest. Other than that, it's a research-based entity. Now, this is nothing new. US has 2 of them. Every country has it. Okay. ICGEB is a good example that provides a lot of support. In fact, there's a big ICGEB office in India. They provide a lot of biotechnology-based products. I think the goal will be to provide training, any kind of help you need to promote your products globally and to do the research. Now, when I say research, okay, some people say, yeah, we spend money on research and development. No, you don't. Fixing the problems is not R&D, okay. Repurposing the drug today that I talked about, creating RNA vaccines, creating technology for biologics, that is research. So don't get confused with my words, that you are contributing towards research. In my opinion, you should allocate a fixed amount, 5% maybe of your sales to research, and demand the DRAP. Instead of paying it to DRAP, okay, you pay it to this entity. And let it be a completely independent entity that will be responsible for its own budgets, its own outcome. But the goal will be to assist the Pakistani pharma industry to become a global pharma industry. if you have an opportunity of bringing biological products under licensing, make sure you also get a license to get the technology, and soon make it internally. And again, I will repeat for the 5th time that, come on, let's take a look at RNA vaccines. I think this is a God-given opportunity that I want you to explore. You start making the RNA vaccines. Okay, I think not only you will need it for corona virus, because once the vaccine is approved, let me tell you what's going to happen. There will be a mayhem. Who wants to? So the one that is close to approval takes 3 doses, 2 doses, and then 1 booster. So they anticipate that over 200 million people in the US will get 3 doses. So they need 600 million doses of this vaccine. The government has already paid $2 billion down payment to Pfizer, and more will be coming. You think they will let Pfizer bring the vaccine to Pakistan? No, they will not be able to, because they will not be able to fulfill the requirements here. Maybe one of you can stand up and say, you know what? I know how to make RNA vaccine, and it's not difficult at all. Once you know it works. I'm not saying starting from scratch, it will be very difficult, but now there's already approved, you know what it's approved with. There are no patents involved, nothing at all. Not that I'm saying you to violate anything. I'm a patent law practitioner myself in US, so I do not ever say to you to violate any patents, but you must use all the information available, which is in the public domain. And that is my little spiel for today. I truly enjoyed speaking to you. I will always welcome your questions, your inquiries, and as I said in a footnote, your challenges. I'm sitting in a position where it's in my heart to help, and I fully desire to tell you exactly and frankly. So the thing you didn't like here, or things that you thought were out of line, I apologize. But I truly believe that if we are to learn from COVID-19, one of the biggest learning is that there's a bright future ahead of us, and we should be ready to make the best out of it for the betterment of the life of Pakistanis and everybody else around us. So stay safe, stay healthy, and stay optimistic.